Hi, my name is Sandra Picacio-Hernandez, and this is my learning journey so far. My start in education began with an interview for a pre-K instructional assistant position. The job was described as a collaborative classroom where I would interact with typically developing and special needs students. I remember them being clear to point out that my primary role was to service the typically developing students because there was another IA who would service the special needs. I was asked if I had any issues or concerns working alongside special needs students. And I remember saying that I had no problem working with children, period. And something to the effect that children will rise to the level of expectations set before them. I chalk it up to the fact that at the time I was purely naive to the notion that anyone would see differences amongst kids and highlight the weaknesses and differences. I was hired for the position, earned my bachelor's degree in special education certification, and went on to become the early childhood special education teacher of that same collaborative unit, where I have remained for the past 15 years. To this day, I have held on to the belief that children will rise to the level of expectations set before them. My beliefs and values most definitely shape the way I guide my students and engage with them in our classroom. It has not been an easy journey, to say the least. The role of a special education teacher is often fraught with not only challenging students but challenging colleagues as well. The same labels that help define and organize a school structure can also limit a child's opportunity for equal education with age-appropriate peers. I continue to hold true to those same words. Children will rise to the level of expectations set before them, and have added to that a desire to see a child for their ability and not limit them with a label. My passion lies in seeing a child for who they are, to hear their words, gestures, and honor them, and to allow them to reach their full potential by removing rigid labels. By seeing a child for who they are, one gives them permission to rise above, to excel without limits, and to not shy away from solving their problems because being a problem solver is the expectation. As Einstein once said, education is not the learning of facts, but training the mind to think. See, in our classroom, regardless of ability, regardless of general education or special education status, regardless of age, and with the absence of obsessing over labels, we are problem solvers. So how do we address the problems facing education today and evolve to a better tomorrow? Specifically, digital learning as it relates to the educational framework of today. Without question, there have been marked improvements. More students have access to technology than ever before, and more students are utilizing technology in and out of the classroom. The adaptation of touchscreens has enabled our littlest learners access to virtual learning. When our littlest learners have access to touchscreens earlier than some teachers owned a touchscreen phone, how do we develop confident educators in digital learning today? We still have gains to make in ensuring socioeconomically disadvantaged students have access to the same opportunities that more affluent school communities have. This includes highly qualified teachers. How do we keep highly qualified teachers in those socioeconomically disadvantaged school communities? When encountered with educators who are less than eager to adapt to the ever-changing digital age, how do we ensure we are setting our learners to be the problem solvers of the future? A study conducted by Rosenthal was one of the first to study the effects of teacher expectations on student engagement and achievement. He decided to trick teachers by telling them that certain students were assessed and determined to be more successful than others. The assessment was a basic IQ test and nothing more, but what he did was choose random students and labeled them destined to bloom, and effectively telling their teachers that they were on the verge of greatness. The results showed that teachers' expectations for the destined to bloom students were dramatically different. If teachers were led to believe in greater IQ scores with those students, then over the course of the school year, kids gained more IQ. Rosenthal further researched how this impact happened. He discovered that a teacher's minute-to-minute interactions with students was directly correlated to their beliefs and expectations. If Johnny took longer to answer and he wasn't one of the destined to bloom, the teacher moved on to ask another peer. But if Johnny was destined to bloom, teachers attributed the long pause Johnny took to answer as a sign of Johnny being a thoughtful student who really takes time with his answers. Teachers were found to be more responsive in terms of more smiles, touches, and nods to the destined to bloom students. Knowing that teachers' expectations can impact a student's success, how do we develop these types of educators, ones that believe in themselves and less resistant to change? We can start by changing the behavior. Gregory et al. Conducted a study which looked at training teachers in entirely new sets of behaviors. Group A teachers were trained and supported with a standard course of information about appropriate beliefs and expectations. Group B teachers were given intense training to include a whole new set of skills based on those appropriate beliefs and expectations. Group B was videotaped, given feedback from personal coaches on how to enhance their current methods. The result was Group B developed a significant shift in behaviors as well as an increase in student engagement over the course of the year of study. It is through research such as Gregory et al. That I hope to bring about change in my own school community. We as teachers need to support each other to make the uncomfortable comfortable. We need to lean in to not just collaborate, but become comfortable with vulnerability. Coach each other, learn from each other's work, and work together to be better educators for it. It is my belief that not only students rise to the level of expectations set before them, but educators, adults as well. We must be willing to unlearn what we have learned in order to bring forth meaningful progress and ultimately create future problem solvers.